any wall or drop out of any window. You may not slither up the chimney, nor burrow through the cellars. Do you understand me?" "We're prisoners," says Iris. Clara isn't fit for the world. She trembles so and breaks into chills. Visit the garden and the sheds beyond. Clara knows where she's permitted to go. Up until now, Vandermeer has been bathing his face in the steam from his bourne coffee, which combines the smells of the warmed beer, sugar and nutmeg with the mattressy odour of his beard. But he tilts his chin parallel to the table and says, as if the next instalment in an ongoing argument, "Do you remember hearing that in Delft the clergy banned gingerbread men at the feast of Sinterklaas? And the children rebelled? They ran shrieking through the streets and wouldn't do their tasks. Children will rebel eventually, my dear." Henrika settles her hands at her side and lowers her eyes. In an apologetic tone, addressing the tabletop, she replies, "I am speaking to Iris. I am not speaking to you." Vandermeer nods affably and says no more, but Iris sees the truth in Margaretta's observation. Although Henrika wears a guise of pretty deference, she acquiesces to no one, least of all her husband. When Clara, who has appeared to pay little attention to this, finishes nibbling, Iris says, "I'll get my sister, and we'll go outside into the garden. We'll wait for you there. Come out when you've dressed." Iris finds Ruth. Iris hates using her sister like this, but huge Ruth may be a more likely attraction than Iris. After all, it was Margaretta's tussle with Ruth that caused Clara to lean out the window and scrutinize the ox girl. Perhaps being disappointed in never seeing a changeling baby, Clara had seen the howling older fisher girl as the next best thing, a grotesque. The back of the house opens out onto a sizable lot, bricked and gated, and those iron gates locked. To one side a kitchen yard for washing and food preparation, for the growth of herbs and vegetables. To the other side, opening off the salon, a small garden, Italianate in design, with pebbled paths and orderly plantings and pilasters at regular intervals surmounted by granite balls. Behind both kitchen yard and formal garden stands a huge shed, and beyond that is a farmyard, where the chickens and a cow are kept, and maybe other animals as well. The shed door opening off the kitchen yard has been locked so far. Iris sinks onto the grass in the garden. Ivy crawls up 2 walls, making a green rustle when the wind pushes through. Ruth collapses next to her and moans in gentle hunger, for she adores gingerbread, and the mention of it has likely made her mouth water. "No gingerbread," says Iris firmly. When Clara emerges, she looks sly but less truculent. Probably she's remembered that after all this is her home, it's her world. She pads across the grass to where the Fisher sisters are waiting. A cat nearly lemon-coloured, follows. Iris decides that the problem of teaching English to Clara can wait. She lies with her head in the grass and doesn't look at Clara, but says, "Why did you want to see the changeling so much?" "Tell me about the Queen of the Gypsies," says Clara. "Is she the Queen of Changelings too?" "What is your interest in changelings?" "Can't you tell? I'm a changeling," says Clara. "I've heard that said, but of course you're not," says Iris. "Changelings can't speak and run and think as people can." "Maybe changelings in England can't," says Clara calmly. "Changelings here can." Iris thinks of the face at the upmost window that first day. Was it Clara in shadows, or Henrika in veils, or Fondenmere himself bearded and browed, or someone else? Or something else? "The devil himself will send out a whiskery hound to snuff us out." Iris rushes on, to keep away from that notion. An imp here, knowing all things, lodged since before their arrival, awaiting them? "Did you ever see a changeling? I mean other than yourself?" she says. Clara shrugs. Her eyes slide over to Ruth and then slide away. "Ruth is a big girl, a bit stupid, that's all," says Iris. "She's not a changeling." "How do you know for sure?" says Clara. "Isn't she older than you?" "Yes." "Well, she would have been changed before you were born." "Nonsense." "Ask your mother." "I won't. It's foolishness." "Ask your father." The wind blows the ivy for moments while Iris watches it, eyes narrowed. Clara then says, "What?" Iris doesn't answer. Clara crawls a little closer. She studies Iris as a small child will study a bug before smashing it with a stone. "Where is your father? Is he a changeling? Did he fly away?" There's no caress of tenderness in her words, but some unrefined brutality. But when Iris won't speak, Clara sighs, moves on, bored. "Well then, tell me something else. Tell me about yourself. You aren't a changeling, just a child. I hardly ever meet children. Why are you called Iris?" "It means a kind of flower," snaps Iris, angry at herself for the tears. "Oh," says Clara, in a superior voice. "Flowers. I know flowers. All we ever hear about is tulip flowers. We have a lot of plants growing under a glass roof behind the sheds, and somewhere to the south of town, a well-guarded plantation in the polderlands. Shall we look in the sheds?" "Later," says Iris. "I've told you about my name. Now you tell me why you think you're a changeling." "Because this is all the world I have. The greater world is poison to a changeling. I would die. So I am kept for my own health and good merely here, in the pretty prison house, with this small room of outside adjacent to it." Suddenly Clara hoists her skirts to her knees and races back and forth across the sheltered space. She touches each of the 3 walls of the garden that caged them. "What is mine? These are mine. The song of birds, though you can't always see them. Pouncer the cat, when he wants to stay with me. Sometimes he doesn't. Look, the flat sky that sits on the garden walls like a leaden roof. Some snails, the same old bushes. Soon there will be enough dead leaves to have a fire, and then smoke will be a rope up into the sky. That's mine. It's all I have. There's a linden tree, says Iris. Where? You can just catch sight of the crown of it. It must be growing on the other side of your garden wall. A bird in it. A green finch. That's mine, and that's all. Clara smacks her lips angrily. At least it's not a crow. A green finch in a linden tree, says Iris. Is it a magic finch? Clara looks suspiciously at Iris, as if afraid of being thought gullible. Clara's next question is partly taunting and partly hopeful. Did you really meet a queen of the gypsies? Iris feels a bit guilty. Any old hobbled dame isn't an ancient angel. Old women are just old women. Iris shrugs, non-committal. Clara responds with sass, as if to prove she doesn't care. Let's go look at the tulips. We own many of them to grow, to show, to sell. Since I'm not allowed to go outside of these walls, I can go to the shed and look, and the gardeners don't mind. My mother may mind. Clara gives a shrug. But my mother doesn't care, and it's her house, not your mother's. It doesn't matter if your mother minds. Come, Iris. Come, you too, Ruth. Ruth prefers to stay where she is. The tulip shed is beyond the herb garden, reached through the kitchen door. Sided to shoulder height with rough milled boards, it's open to the elements for a foot or two above. The boards of the roof aren't all fixed with nails. Some boards can be shifted so that in warm weather sun can come in, while the shed's walls protect the plants from the worst of the wind. The plants are arranged in terracotta trays with porous bottoms. The trays stand on rough tables, and the soil of the nursery floor is dank. The plants appear in ranks, the bulbs apparently having been sunk at intervals of 2 or 3 weeks apart. Here are the newest trays of plantings, where nothing shows yet through the reddish-brown soil. Beyond trays in which plants send up their shoots. Trays where the plants grow taller and then develop a head and some leaves. Finally, near where Iris and Clara stand, the flowers begin to show some colour and to open up their petals.